They've given us a little more time because of our particularly distinguished authors, and a little more time because, as we know, there is no playoff game this year to
Not in Chicago.
distract us. I didn't think there's anything you could say that would make you less beloved than you are. But you may have just hit on it.
It's just factual information.
Yeah, I know that's important to you. Neil,
Yeah,
let's try and recover a little audience
try.
sentiment now if we can.
I'll try hard.
You have said, the universe called me. What's that like?
Well, I said that in a context of describing my first.
Oh, you didn't mean backstage.
Yeah. You called me to come up.
Yeah.
When I was 9, a first visit to my local planetarium, the Hayden Planetarium. By the way, the Hayden Planetarium was the 5th in the United States. The Adler was the 1st.
You've hit upon just the right thing
I'm trying to get you back here,
yeah.
see?
Good work.
That's right.
Yeah.
There'll be more, I'm just working on it.
Yeah.
There's a rapid fire of newly constructed planetariums in the United States in the 1930s after that technology was perfected. Previously, they would puncture holes in a round dome and sort of rotate it. It was very awkward and clumsy, and you couldn't have an entire room. The technology was perfected by engineers at Zeiss, the optical company in Germany, and we all picked one up at the big cities. So my first encounter with the night sky was at my local planetarium, the Hayden Planetarium in New York City, at age 9. And you know, the big comfortable chairs, and you sit back and you look up, they dim the lights, the stars came out. There's some countless thousands of stars. And I thought it was a hoax because I grew up in the Bronx, and I've seen the night sky from the Bronx. It's got like 14 stars. So it was an entertaining hoax, but a hoax nonetheless. And within a couple of years, we would venture to Pennsylvania, to Caribbean, places where you're away from lights. And I would conclude that, in fact, the Hayden Planetarium was capturing a reality. And I'll tell you how strongly imprinted I was by that planetarium sky. Since then, I've used some of the greatest telescopes in the world on the tops of mountains. And I go to the mountaintop and I look up at sparkling, crisp, clear night skies. And I say, reminds me of the Hayden Planetarium. So that night, I felt like the universe was calling me. Like I had no say in the matter. I said, this appears to be boundless. I'm steeped in profound ignorance, and that attracts me curiously. What does it mean to be a curious kid? There's something you don't know, and you want to find out. With the universe, there's something I want to know, and nobody has the answer. That makes it even that much more fascinating to me. And so that's what began the journey. And by age 11, I had an answer to that annoying question adults ask kids. What do you want to be when you grow up? I say, astrophysicist. That pretty much ended the conversation. There's no, oh, I know Aunt Matilda is no, nobody knows that. So, so yeah, that's what I was called. I'm pretty sure I had no say in the matter at the time. And I've been thinking about the universe ever since.
Judy,
I just have to tell you, I mean, I went to the Hayden Planetarium. They took us from New Jersey. We were in maybe junior high school. And instead of what happened to you, we just cared about making out with boys when we were in the bar. We were looking up at the stars, but, you know, the stars were telling me something else. I'm sorry.
No.
I'm sorry.
And
So to you,
So we're a good team.
to you, heavenly bodies meant something different. The same.
Okay.
Okay. That's true. The back row was the makeout row. That's true. Okay.
Oh, mercy. I think I understand your books in a whole new light.
Oh, wow.
You have said, writing saved my life.
It did.
What happened?
Really. Well, you know, I grew up at a time when we were told to, you know, go to school. My mother said, go to college, get a degree in case, God forbid, you ever have to work. That was, and so I got married when I was young, and I had 2 babies, and I loved them, but I was unhappy and going crazy because that creative, that creative work that I had when I was in school, creative outlet, I seemed not to have anymore, and I needed that desperately. And I was sick all the time until I started to write. And writing cured the illnesses and saved the soul.
And you began to write at a time when many people are never busier, when you had 2 children at home, right?
Yeah, and I used to think, oh boy, wait till they're grown up and out of the house. I will really be able to accomplish a lot. And in fact, it's just the opposite. It was, I had to write while they were in preschool because otherwise I wasn't going to be able to do it. So I really, I was determined, which, like being curious, right, is the most important thing.
Yeah, I think the lesson there is you write because you can't not write.
Exactly. Oh, you must have read that I said that.
Did you?
Yes, I say all the time.
No, I swear I've not read.
No, I know you haven't read one word of what I've written, but
Of all the things on my reading list,
Neil,
they were. I'm sorry, but they were not on my list. I'm sorry.
it's never too late. But I have said that for years.
I've thought about it.
You don't write because you think it's going to be fun, because, I think I'll grow up and be a writer. You write because you can't stop yourself, you can't help yourself, and it's hell. It's never easy. I don't know. Maybe
Well, that's why I like the phrase, I like having written. And then you look back and say, hey,
I like having written too.
But the act of doing so is actually can be quite torturous unless you're, Shakespeare or something.
Well, that's why after 50 years of writing.
A question for Neil, but I'm interested in what
Yes.
you think about it as well, Judy, and we might rephrase it for you. I think everyone here would like to know from you.
Pluto's still not a planet. Just get over it. Okay. Was that the question? I don't know
I
if
think
that
the
was the question.
alderman from Pluto is here tonight and begs to disagree.
Oh, by the way, the relief sculptures in the Adler Planetarium, itself founded in 1930, it has 8 planets because Pluto wasn't yet discovered.
So it's
at the time.
current.
So it's still current. Yeah, it's current. For having just missed Pluto when it started.
Sorry. Serious question here, all right? Are we alone?
In the universe?
Yes.
We don't know for sure, but it's likely that we're not. The likelihood comes from, if you study the problem, you ask, well, what are we made of? The ingredients of life on Earth. They're the top 4 ingredients in the universe. We're not made of anything rare. And how quickly did life get started on Earth? Like really, really quickly, like within about 100 million years, sounds like a long time, but on the 4.5 billion years of Earth, it's like that. And so it's the time from when we stopped getting slammed by asteroids, because that's not fair to start the clock before then, because it's hot and molten. Let that cool down, now start the clock, 100 million years. So nature had no trouble figuring out the DNA molecule and turning organic molecules into self-replicating life. And the universe is old. So you combine these factors, it would be inexcusably egocentric to suggest that we are alone in the universe. And if you still think so, after seeing that information, you part the curtains that some other philosophy to which you hold dear that requires you think that, but it's not based on evidence at all. But it's a different question from, have we been visited? That's a different thing.
Oh, you mean like the fishermen in Mississippi who see the
Like
green light?
anybody, anywhere. Yeah, I mean, I wonder if we have been visited, but they landed like during Comic-Con or something and nobody noticed. They just walk among everyone in cosplay.
Trying to get everyone's attention.
Trying to get the attention is like not working. Plus we have all this space debris orbiting the Earth.
Yeah.
they probably looked at Earth and said, that is a nasty place. Plus, our sensors show no sign of intelligent life anywhere. Let's move on to another planet. You ask.
Yeah, no, I'm going to
Yes.
slightly different angle for you on this. Why do young people often feel so lonely?
Good question.
Why do any of us feel lonely? I mean, young people often think they're the only ones. They don't know. You know, just what Erica just said, how reassuring it can be to find yourself in a book because you were so sure you were the only one.
Well, can I ask that? If we all, I didn't realize until I was older, because I grew up in a very crowded city and I had a very extroverted family, that there are people who are introverts. And there's a great quote that showed up on one of the walls. Books. How's it go? Giving introverts an excuse to not have to speak to anyone since 1454. Okay? So I just wonder, when are you mature enough to know the difference between being lonely and just choosing to be alone?
Well,
Yeah, thank you.
it takes a lifetime for some people, and some people never know that.
Mm-hmm.
Lucky ones figure it out.
Over the years, did any publisher ever say to you, Judy Blume, oh gosh, not just that stuff about the periods again?
They wouldn't have said that because, it wasn't an again thing.
Yeah.
But in the beginning,
Yeah.
no, because I started writing in the early 70s, and the 70s was a wonderful decade
Yeah.
for writers, for kids' books, for children who were reading them. It was much freer, it was much more open. People weren't so afraid, and I think fear is a very big thing when it comes to what you're probably going to ask me about censorship.
Okay. Censorship, Judy Blume.
No, what
You have been
I think
outspoken
it's
in
fear.
recent years. Your concerns not only about censorship, but also what amounts to pre-censorship.
Well, because I think if you scare younger writers,
But what's pre-censorship? I don't know what that is.
pre-censorship is when the writer censors himself or herself. Like, if I say that word, I'm not going to get published. If I write about this, I'm not going to get published. I think that's lessening now, because I think it's turning the other way. We're turning more toward publishers having less fear and saying, we're going to go for it.
Yeah.
But still, every year, the books are banned in schools.
Yeah. Well, are you concerned about ideas and sentiments being banned for other reasons in our culture these days? Banned is probably not the
Challenged.
challenge.
Let's
yeah.
say challenged, because that's
Or,
what
or,
happens.
or just squelched somehow. Yeah.
You name it, somebody's going to challenge it.
Yeah. I mean, every year, To Kill a Mockingbird is banned somewhere, it seems.
Yes,
right?
that, but there are so many, and each year it just increases.
Question for both of you.
Actually, we get some banning too. That happened. Can I share a quick banning story?
Yeah.
Yeah. So my radio show, Star Talk, it's also TV, we decided to make a book called the Star Talk Book, which gathered all the fun topics that we discussed and put in a beautifully illustrated volume published by National Geographic. And so it's a very readable, fun coffee table book. Any page you open, there's a question at the top and it gets answered. What do you pack if you go to Mars? What would it be like to throw a baseball on the moon? All of these were actual topics of conversation. Well, Scholastic wanted to make a Scholastic edition sold exclusively, at least initially, in book fairs, school book fairs. Okay? So, all right, so we didn't have a problem. So we said, all right, let's remove the sex, drugs, and rock and roll. We didn't have a problem self-editing that. So we did this. And we handed it in, and the editors further removed all reference to evolution.
Oh,
And I said, no, you didn't. Sorry. That was the Bronx in me coming out in that moment. So that became a fight. That
Yeah.
went, well, we didn't have space.
no.
Don't even pretend like that's what you're trying to say to me. And I don't know if it's because I was wielding the power of my position, because this is not long ago, this was just a couple of years ago, or whether they actually, grew a spine, but we got all the evolution put back in. And now you can learn about evolution in the Star Talk book when you're in middle school. So I don't know. I don't actually know if just because I strong on them or because they saw the light. But maybe it doesn't matter in the end. It's in the book.
You have power, and not everyone does.
Yeah.
And
I don't like I'd rather wield the power of reason than the
Yes.
power of threatening to kick their ass. Reason just seems a little more civilized to me.
publishers and book fairs, that's a whole thing.
It's a whole thing.
You asked me, did I have any stories about that? Yeah, Judy, if this one word that starts with an F, stays in this book, you will lose, we will lose, because it was the publisher, we will lose all our book fair sales. So think about it.
And you have to make a practical choice.
You can use friggin', no problem.
Can you put in like
Like
the
kids
expletive?
don't know?
Can you put in
kids
like the
don't
@
know?
sign and the hashtag sign and everything in between the F and the K?
So
That's a literary bleep, right?
it could be, yeah.
Okay,
But like every kid knows what it is. But if, so I asked my son, my grown son came to the house that day, and I said, Larry, they want me to take out this one word that this kid would use in this instance. He wouldn't use
Now,
any other
let
word.
me point out the obvious. Bless you, you're refraining from using it now.
Fuck. Fuck. Fucking. That's what he says.
I
He
think we
says
all
like
feel that
this.
we've shared an important
says-
moment in history here.
It's a very angry 15-year-old boy talking to his sister. He says, here's to you, Rachel Robinson, holds up a glass. Here's to my whole fucking family. And that's what he would say. He wouldn't use any other word. And
And you get the alliteration there too. That's good. Fucking family.
And my son said, like, you are Neil deGrasse Tyson. My son said, for God's sake, you're Judy Blume. If you're not going to be honest about this, how are you going to live with yourself?
Your son told you that?
Yes.
I mean, your grandson?
No, my son.
Your son, that's pretty good. That's good. That's a good.
That's
Yeah,
good.
boy.
Don't
That's
raise
good.
yourself a good son right there.
I did. I did.
Yeah.
Right?
So of course, the word stayed. The word stayed in the book, and the book lost all its book fair sales because that's how they are.
I'm going to guess both of you get letters from all over the world. If you could give us some idea of what your correspondence is like.
You go first.
Really?
Yes.
You sure?
But you can't talk the whole time. But you can go first.
I think I've been pretty good though.
You've been
so
great.
far. I've been very polite, very. So I'll try to make this short. I'm actually collecting my letters now to publish them in a volume. Letters from an astrophysicist, which on the surface says, well, why would anybody care? But then you realize, sifting away the questions that are just simple ones that can be answered by a graduate student, there's a whole other set of questions that apparently people felt comfortable enough asking me about their deepest private life. In one example, it's a letter from a woman with a 10-year-old son who's on the spectrum. She says, I'm raising my child the way many generations before me have. I'm sending him to Hebrew school every week so that he can learn the Torah and recite the passages and be a good Jewish child. Yet he comes home, says he doesn't believe any of the Bible stories. And I ask him why. And his son said, again, he's a little bit on the spectrum, the autism spectrum. He said, I don't believe any story. Why? Oh, because I saw Cosmos. Of course, nowhere in Cosmos do we tell you not to believe Bible stories, but what I think happened was Cosmos energized his curiosity and his caring about sort of what is objectively true in the world. So her letter to me is, what should she do about this? Because then comes the phrase, frankly, sometimes I can't say that he's wrong about this. And so what should she do? And it took me like a year to figure out how to reply to this woman, and then I finally did. And I replied, on Passover, actually. And just, I thought that'd make a nice touch. And what I told her was, Jews as a community have some of the highest diversity of expressed Judaism of any demographic. There are atheist Jews and there are Orthodox Jews. And the atheist Jews participate in rituals as a matter of community, not as a matter of expressed belief. So I said to her, you can still fold him into the Jewish community, but have him participate in rituals which, especially if he's on the spectrum, will be important for him to be exposed to the interpersonal dynamics that goes on in human rituals, because human rituals are some of the most potent things that bind us in this world. And then I said, Happy Passover. That was the letter.
That's nice.
So, thank you for a third of you who liked that recitation. No, so my point is, I'm not there to tell people what they should believe or not. That's not my goal. Yeah. My goal is to offer a perspective. I offered her a perspective, and I followed up on it, and she embraced that way of approaching her son, because she didn't want to fight her son, especially if he might be right. Mm-hmm. So this letter is one of the letters in this book, this exchange. So yes, that came from a very different demographic than you might think would care.
Did it come as a physical letter, or did it
So
come
nowadays, there's email is the primary way. Generally, if I'm written a physical letter, even if they give an email address, I'll write back on my letterhead. Then there's an artifact that they can. I have a lot of fancy pens. I sign with a fancy pen. So I've found that people appreciate that incremental extra effort.
I think it's changed. It's certainly changed for me from the days before young people and older people too were writing emails. I think when you have to take a pencil and paper and you can spill out your deepest thoughts, fears, ask the questions. And in those days before the computer, certainly the letters, I think, were much more from inside.
Before we invented emojis.
Well, yes.
So you had to actually express your feelings rather than putting an emoticon with a smiley face or a heart or a sad face. You actually had to say you were sad.
I've just discovered emojis.
Oh,
and
you did?
I love them.
No,
and I
can't.
decorate
No!
everything with
Security,
emojis.
remove this woman now.
And I just said
take
to
her
my
award.
husband, does that make me a nerd? He said, I think so. So,
Yeah,
okay,
you're a
no
nerd,
more.
but
No more.
it's people's excuse who forgot how to actually express it in words.
Well, I haven't forgotten that, so it's okay.
Good.
So
I mean, they're a little like, can't they be seen as kind of like hieroglyphics was?
A little bit, yeah. In the day where we don't use words at all, it's just emoticons, and then it's apocalyptic Earth, and there's no one to communicate forward, and then the rats that rise to intelligence look at our civilization, they just see emoticons, and they'll need a Rosetta Stone to figure it out.
No, it's why they're not coming. It's why they're not coming. They're there, but they're seeing that, and they say, what for?
Can you recall for us letters over the years where youngsters poured their heart out to you and made a connection with something that you wrote?
I used to
Felt
know
only
them all
Judy
by
Blume will
heart. I used to know them by heart, and I did a book in the 80s called Letters to Judy. See, so you're doing the right thing.
Thank you.
You know, I mean, I have favorites, like, Dear Judy, please send me the facts of life in number order.
Wow.
Just, can you give us the top three?
The top three?
No, I meant
facts?
yes,
No.
yes.
No.
I think we can
No,
figure
I
them
mean,
out, yeah.
just, you know, there are some kids that I corresponded with for many years, from the age of 12 until they grew up, and some that I still hear from now.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. Boxes and boxes and boxes of letters from
That must be very important to you, that you would make time for that.
It's very important. At one point, I had to go to a therapist because I so wanted to save this child. Yeah. And I'm not trained.
Can you tell us about?
Oh, no, it's too long. too much. But anyway, you know, you can't save everybody. All you can do is be there to say, I hear you. And, you know, I don't give advice. That's not my job. Except if it's someone who's in real trouble, then you have to, you know, tell them they need to get some help and how to get it.
By the way, with the...
This is getting too heavy.
No, that's fine. No,
Let's go back to what my
nothing wrong
father
with...
told me about getting your period. I just have to tell them this. My father, at age 9, he heard this story before, but I have to share it with you because it has to do with, you know. So at age 9, I wanted to know this because my cousin something, and I said, what will happen to me when I was 13? And my father tried to tell me, took me on his lap, and he tried to tell me, and he explained this whole wonderful thing about the moon. Yes, about the moon and the lunar cycle, and it led me to believe that every time the moon was full, women all over the world were having this wonderful thing happen to them, right? I love that. That connects us. It does.
It's a beautiful thought.
Thank you.
You can imagine there's some animals that go into estrus at the same time of the year, so that all females are like ready to get pregnant at the same time. So that's a pretty wild time in those kingdoms, you know, in those. I just want to say, I had a, oh wait, just to be clear, this is the last thing I thought I'd be talking about tonight, but unless your period is exactly 29.54 days long, you are not aligned with the moon. You will go out of phase with the moon continuously. Just so you know. Okay? There's no... The moon has nothing to do with your period.
If only my father had known.
Thank you.
But he
Yeah,
tried.
just make that... I'm no
definitive.
gynecologist, but I'm an astrophysicist. The moon has nothing to do with your period. Okay. No, just... Wait.
No, sorry.
Moving right along.
Well, I got to toss something in real quick.
Yeah. It's about time for you to swear again, Judy. Go ahead, yeah.
I just want to tell you my favorite letter. It's really short.
Yeah.
My favorite letter that I got. Some of you may know that I'm implicated in the demotion of Pluto to a dwarf planet. I was an accessory to that. I drove the getaway car, but I didn't make it happen. But I was a participant. Anyhow, I was implicated by the public for this, which means I have hate mail from third graders in a file cabinet about this big. And so 7 years later, I get a handwritten letter from a 22-year-old boy, but young man, who said, and this is written deadpan, said, "Dear Dr. Tyson, I have looked into the situation regarding Pluto and the arguments that you have presented, and I find them to be compelling, and I fully agree. So I must formally apologize to you for having written a letter when I was in 3rd grade that called you a poo-poo head for demoting Pluto." Straight up letter.
Poo-poo head's okay, right?
Poo-poo heads,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, poo-poo head
that's
works
good,
in that
right?
case.
Scholastic book fairs.
They would have let that
no
one
problem.
through.
Right.
The censors at Scholastic Book Fair would have allowed. Yeah.
Judy, you run a bookstore in Key West.
I do. I have a new professional life after 50 years or more of writing.
Yeah.
I opened a bookstore with my husband. We founded a bookstore in Key West. And you should all come because I love being a bookseller. And I get up every morning and I say, "Thank you, I don't have to write today."
But
And
as I don't have to tell you, a lot of bookstores are going out of business.
But a lot of indie bookstores are opening and they're thriving. and they're doing well. And when you see the people come in from all over the world, our tourists come to Key West from all over the world, and they come in and they say, oh, I can smell the books. I don't even smell them anymore, and I love to smell books. Yeah. But I don't, and they love it.
Can't say I smelled the iPad.
No.
I smelled the Kindle.
No.
Not the same thing.
It was the first thing I loved about the library when I was tiny. And my mother took me, and I sat on the floor, and I pulled down the books, and I sniffed them. I smell everything.
A little
you guys
creepy,
are
but
lucky
we get it.
that I'm
Oh,
not
yeah.
sniffing around. and
Well, I've read, you said once that a librarian and the right book can change a life.
it can save a child's life, too. It can.
Did you have that kind of book? You remember a book?
No, for me?
Yeah.
No, I mean, books opened up a whole new world to me, obviously, but I have known cases where a child was so desperate and so really she wanted to end her life. And the librarian, she walked 6 miles. It's the kind of story your parent tells you. I had to walk when I was a girl. She did. She walked 6 miles every day because she was homeschooled, but her parents were never there. And she walked to the public library where the librarian understood her and put the right book into her hand and opened up a whole new world of possibilities to her. And she's one of those kids that I corresponded with for years and years and years. She's grown. She has 2 children of her own. And yes, reading changed her life.
And we should remind ourselves that's going on here every day in this city, in local libraries.
All 81 of them. 81 branches. I
Oh,
remember
you
that
know
number.
what?
Yeah.
Oh, I sat next to a wonderful woman, I don't even know where she is, at dinner tonight, who told me she didn't know that this was going to come up tonight. She said, the public library, Pullman branch, Pullman branch of the public library changed her life. And when she was a little girl, her mother took her on the bus to that library, and books changed her life.
Let me ask one last question.
Thank you, wherever you are.
And I'll direct it to Dr. Tyson.
Neil.
Yeah.
Neil.
Neil.
Okay.
As you look
Okay,
out,
Dr. Neil. If you
Dr.
gotta-
Neil.
You got to say.
as you look out in the cosmos and eternity, do you see the Cubs winning the World Series again?
Well, okay. Just remind me, didn't the Cubs win a few years ago?
2016.
Correct.
Yeah.
Now, they missed the prophecy by 1 year,
Yes.
okay?
yes,
The
yeah.
prophecy was from Back to the Future 2,
Yeah.
which took place in the year 2015, like 25 years in the
Well,
future.
that was a movie prophecy, not like the Aztec calendar.
What's the difference?
I knew you'd say that. I set that up for you, yeah.
Yeah. It's a cultural prophecy.
Yeah.
And so in it, it said Cubs sweep World Series or something. They won, but it wasn't in a sweep.
Yeah.
So you won one in 100 years, so now you want to win another?
108 years, not who's counting.
Okay,
Yeah.
so let me just try to make some enemies like I started. In New York City, I was born and raised in the Bronx, which makes me a native Yankee fan. Yep, one person from the Bronx in the front row. And there's a bridge between Manhattan and the Bronx. We cross that bridge, you see Yankee Stadium, it's right there. And it used to be a billboard right there. And it said, they call it the World Series, but it's usually played here.
Ooh. Ooh.
There's been like
Probably
100.
didn't like
There's been
last
like
night's
120 World Series, and the Yankees have been in like 40 of them. It's a stunning number. They haven't won all 40. They won 27. So I mean, so again, that's just we can groan about it, but it's a playful fact. So, so I think it almost doesn't matter if they don't win the World Series if you keep going to the games and showing them that you love them. In the Bronx, when the Yankees lost, we said, and we stopped going. And that put the management on notice because they couldn't make their contracts with their players. Yeah. And they took it very seriously that they were not winning. Dr.
Tyson will be signing books after this. I'd be flabbergasted if anyone would want it. I know my plans have changed.
By the way, I've been to one Cubs game in my life at Wrigley Field, and the day started beautifully, and then like clouds came over, and then it rained heavily, and they had to cancel the game. So I didn't have clothing to stay warm and dry, so I bought a Cubs sweatshirt, which I still have, and I wear that in New York, and so I wear a Cubs sweatshirt in New York. Just so
all right.
Yeah.
It's been wonderful. Did you want to say something?
Oh, no, I was just going to ask him how he liked last night's game.
Oh, no. Yeah.
I was 16 to 1.
I don't know. George said it's time to go to sleep when it was 11.
16.
Yeah. So, you know.
It's okay. It's a game. You know, it's just one game.
It's just one game.
Just one game.
Yankees lost by a lot to a little bit. And the interesting thing about baseball is if you lose 1-0 or 20-0, it's just one loss. So to get overexcited about how much they lost is really not a rational response to that fact. Yeah.
It's not.
Could we have a?
I'm just saying.
I'm a Mets fan.
Mets fan.
Oh God.
Oh.
Okay.
Could we have a round of applause for a wonderful author, Judy Blume and deGrasse Tyson?